Welcome everyone to our annual Alvin H. Baum Jr. Memorial Lecture honoring lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, Jewish social justice activism. To those of you who are here in the room and to those of you joining us on the live stream, we are so glad you made this event your priority. This is the fourth in a series of 5 lectures made possible by the family and friends of Cheryl Lazar and Al Baum, both of blessed memory, as a way to remember and celebrate their lives and their contributions to pursuing justice and equality for all of us. We host this lecture to coincide with the anniversary of Al Baum's death, known as his Yortzeit. It is a Jewish custom at the anniversary of a dear one's death to study something relevant to that person. We began this memorial lecture 3 years ago as a communal way to observe the anniversary by learning about what was important to Al in his life. Among Al's concerns was addressing the harm often caused by religious-based homophobia and religious-based transphobia. I'm Rabbi Camille Angel. If you'd asked me 8 years ago if I'd find my calling as an out and proud lesbian rabbi in a Catholic university teaching queering religion, namely how to dismantle religious-based homophobia and transphobia in classes that fulfill core requirements, I would not have believed you. But back then I knew nothing about Jesuit Catholic social ethics like cura personalis, care for the whole person, and being for others, those most vulnerable and on the margins. Thanks to my many conversations with Father Donald Godfrey, our university chaplain, and Dr. Angelica Quinones, our director of university ministry, and Reverend Dr. Rone Wingate Sims, and our whole university ministry team, I've come to better learn and appreciate what we share as Jews and Christians and where we diverge. It is a blessing to be a teacher here at this university that sits between the nexus of progressive values and interfaith religious pluralism, civic duty, and deep scholarship. Representing the university, we are grateful that Father John Fitzgibbons, our interim president, is here with us tonight to offer words of welcome and blessing. Your presence means so much to me personally and to this gathered community. Your presence means so much because for most of our history, and still in many places, even here in San Francisco, being gay or lesbian, bisexual and transgender, non-binary, has been deemed unnatural, immoral, and criminal. In the classroom, I hear the stories of our students who have been made to feel less than fully human. Young people consider suicide as a means to escape the pain and shame which religious authorities, teachers, parents, texts, dogma, doctrines, politicians, priests, rabbis, and imams spew, preach, legislate, and dictate in order to destroy our lives. Students tell me that if their parents were to find out that they are taking classes that honor queer elders or learning about anything with the word queer in it, their financial support could be taken away. Too many of my students report that they don't have any relationship with an adult who still believes in them once they know they're trans or queer. I want to take another minute here to elaborate with an example. I asked for my students' permission to share this short passage from their recent essay on the intersectional relationship between their religious upbringing and identity, their sexual orientation, and their gender expression. They write, "Growing up a Black Christian, I was raised to believe that being gay or trans was a sin. This belief was reinforced in religious settings within Black culture and in my own household. I was taught that being queer or trans was shameful, that gay people would burn in hell for eternity, and that queerness was the result of mental illness or trauma, something that made people that way. Growing up as a Black Christian, I was raised to believe that being gay or trans is often seen as a white people thing, a mentality deeply rooted in the legacy of European colonization, colonialism, and the spread of Christianity. As a result, I carried immense shame about my queerness growing up. At first, I only questioned my sexuality, slowly discovering my attraction to girls. Now I find myself questioning my gender as well, an entirely new layer of self-exploration. In many ways, I believe transphobia is even more pervasive than homophobia within Christian communities, making this journey even more complex. Being Black, queer, and trans in America in 2025, the primary way I can liberate myself is to release myself from the shackles of Christianity. Though the specifics are unique to this student, on average in my classes, 3/4 of my students describe something not so dissimilar. It's not surprising that many people have given up on religion. Religion gave up on them first. Religious-based hatred for gays and lesbians, transgender and gender nonconforming people is a historic injustice that continues to wreak emotional and spiritual havoc on people of all ages. And Judaism, Christianity, Islam are largely to blame. Religious teachers, preachers, and parishioners have cherry-picked scriptural verses to create a false myth of God versus gay. But God versus gay isn't just a false dichotomy. It's a rebellion against the image of God itself. And it is among the most pervasive and hurtful untruths in America and around the globe today. And people all across the ideological spectrum continue to believe it. So, when students and perspectives see the rainbow flag in the window of the university ministry office, when we make religious support for queer and trans people fully visible and explicit, it matters. For some, it's life-affirming, and for some, it's life-saving. And so, to have you here tonight is tremendously powerful and symbolic, and something none of us take for granted. So, thank you, Father John.
With all my heart, welcome. You are welcome. You will always be welcome here. May it be so everywhere. It is a delight and a privilege to be with you and bask in the blessing of Al and Robert, who are, in so many ways, heroes in the city of San Francisco and in our university. Be assured, you are loved and you are creating a better world. It would have been enough if you had only poured out your love by creating the world. It would have been enough if you had only made covenant with us. It would have been enough if you had only made humanity in your own image and likeness, all of us. It would have been enough if you had only delivered us from slavery and bondage, But you, our God, have made us your prophets in this time, to heal and renew the earth, to be co-creators with you, to love as you love, without distinction, freely, completely, to reverence and celebrate the ones we love as you have created us, in generous confidence, in justice and equity, in strength and in tenderness. As it is, most gracious and Holy One, you have abundantly lavished your goodness upon us. Each and all are created in your image, radically caring for the neighbor, the partner, the spouse, the lover you have given us all. You are the divine one of passion and compassion, and we beg you, we plead, make our world better through our hearts and our hands. Amen.
Amen.
The SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice of the University of San Francisco acknowledges our presence on the unceded land of the indigenous Ohlone communities and pays our respects to these traditional caretakers and elders, past, present, and emerging. It's our intention that this acknowledgement plays a role, however small, in a much larger process of confronting the past in order to create a not yet realized future rooted in social justice. Welcome everyone to USF, where tonight we're having our first event for the SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice of the spring 2025 semester, where we will learn with Rabbi Sydney Mintz, who will deliver tonight's talk, What a Long, Strange Trip It's Been, Rabbinic Tales of Resistance and Resilience. My name's Aaron Hahn Tapper, and I direct our university's SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice. And I want to begin tonight by thanking the JSSJ faculty and staff, especially MJ Abrams and Victoria Farlow, for help organizing this event. Before introducing Rabbi Camille Shira Angel, which I asked to do, and I know it's weird to do an intro to an intro to an intro to an intro, so it goes. I'd like to tell you take a very brief moment to tell you about the extraordinary university where you all are, and our exceptional Jewish Studies and Social Justice program. Founded in 1855, USF is our city's first university. Our tagline, "Change the world from here," is the real deal. With 8,000 undergraduate and graduate students, U.S. News and World Report says that we're the #1 most diverse campus in the country for a number of years now in terms of racial and ethnic makeup. An educational institution where 1/3 of our undergraduates are the first in their families to attend college. We estimate that 10% of our student body identifies as Jewish and some 30% identifies as queer. A premier Jesuit Catholic school, in 1977, we became the first Catholic institution in the world to endow a Jewish studies program. In 2008, we became the first university of any kind, Catholic or otherwise, to found an academic program formally linking Jewish studies with social justice. In 2019, we added yet another first to our renowned history by forming a new position on campus, that of Rabbi in Residence, which, thank goodness, Rabbi Camille Angel is the one in that position, an openly gay, lesbian rabbi. In fall 2023, we launched the country's first ever graduate level certificate in JEDI and JSSJ. Yes, equity, justice, diversity, those DEI words, and Jewish studies and social justice. which gives professionals the opportunity to learn from both scholars and activists, offering a blend of academic study and real-world application. And then in 2024, we added yet another first by adding a second rabbi, the first openly gender-expansive rabbi, to our team, Rabbi Shalom Mendel. In the classroom, we offer a wide range of significant Jewish studies courses not found in other educational settings. Beyond the classroom, we offer unique events that are free and open to the public, such as tonight's event. Through the JSSJ program, we believe that education is the best long-term way to create systemic change. Whether one has the time to take a semester-long course or a mere few hours to hear from a single speaker, education is fundamental to making our world better, paramount in shining the spotlight on the margins, on oppressed communities who are mistreated merely because of their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or any other social identity under the sun. The 3 other JSSJ events we have this semester are in your program, so I encourage you to check that out. If you'd like to learn more about these events or sign up for our once-a-month newsletter, there's a sign-up QR code outside. Now let me introduce Rabbi Camille Angel. Rabbi Angel and I met in 2008. I was in my second year on campus, starting a new course called Social Justice, Activism, and Jews, and knew very little about the landscape of the Bay Area, but I knew about Congregation Sha'ar Zahav, a flagship queer synagogue here in the city, and called them up, and Rabbi Angel had an assistant for that short period of time, and she came to campus, and every year for a number of years we had lunch together, which grew into, frankly, a lifetime membership where I've truly grown to love you and your family. When Rabbi Angel and I put our heads together to create this position, I don't think either of us truly understood how much work was needed, and that she could not have been more of the right person for the job. Learning with Camille, working with Camille since 2017 as a faculty member, but since 2019 as our rabbi in residence has been a gift. One of those unplanned gifts that just happens in life, and you're like, thank goodness that happened. And it's been my honor to walk the world with you for the last number of years.
Who was Al Baum? Al was warm-hearted, gifted, and a devoted community leader. Well-educated with several degrees, Al had careers as a lawyer, an urban planner, a social worker, and a therapist. He was instrumental in founding the New Israel Fund, the Gay and Lesbian Task Force of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco, and he served on countless boards and committees, including the American Civil Liberties Union and the Lambda Legal Defense Education Fund. In 2013, he was honored as the Lifetime Achievement Grand Marshal of the 43rd Annual San Francisco Pride Parade. Not only did he do good deeds in abundance, but Al also motivated others to do good. Al became my friend nearly 25 years ago when I moved to San Francisco to become the spiritual leader of the historically gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual synagogue, Congregation Sha'ar Zahav. Al wanted to meet the new rabbi, to get to know me, and also gently let me know I wouldn't be seeing him in the temple too much, but that I could call on him whenever I needed. I really got to know Al at the height of his joy as he and Robert Holgate prepared for their wedding. And I also had the sacred privilege of helping Al reach his final days on this earth, surrounded by love. Being with people at these incredible life moments is so much of what being a rabbi is all about. Before we turn to the next part of our evening, and I share with you Al, let me say a few personal words about our honored guest, Rabbi Mintz. This is the first time that this lecture in memory of Al has been delivered by a rabbi, let alone my colleague and HUC classmate, 2 years behind me. And what a difference those 2 years made. Tomorrow, we'll be celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Central Conference of American Rabbis' report on homosexuality, which led to opening the seminary and the rabbinate for us to be ordained. The year I applied, I was still closeted. The year you applied, you were out as a lesbian in your application. I'd say we were both pretty naive about how profound the impact would be on ourselves and psyches and relationships, as well as our congregants' lives, to insist on being our fabulous lesbian selves. We began our rabbinic careers, mine in New York, at a congregation much like Congregation Emanu-El, where you have been a rabbi for 28 years. Now, each year is a dog year when you serve a congregation, so that's a very long time. We both spent years officiating at straight couple weddings while our own marriages weren't considered legal. In those first marriages, we had a particular impact on the mainstream liberal Jewish communities we served within our queer communities and families of choice. We are the first generation of lesbian OG rabbis. And when I think of how the Jewish world has changed since you wrote your chapter in this book, Lesbian Rabbis, the First Generation. So I just have to say, my mother of blessed memory, she saw this book. I brought it with me when it first came out. I couldn't wait to read everyone's chapters. And my mother said, "Oh, let me see that so I can read about you." And I was like, "I'm not in the book." She goes, "Who's a bigger lesbian rabbi than you?" Tonight, you are the winner. And a fitting honoree to deliver this year's lecture. I know that you will bring honor to Al's memory and legacy. So without further ado, here's some words from Al.
So I come from an educated family. They knew a lot and they read, and they were financially comfortable. Honesty was valued. Education was valued. Hard work was valued. My father wanted both my brother and I to take over the business, but we didn't do it. He knew that we had the brain power to do it. He was what they called then an investment counselor, but it was a very white-collar job, very socially acceptable job. My brother had no interest in doing it, and I had no interest in doing it. I always resisted being pigeonholed. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a Harvard man. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a brain with a capital B. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a Jew. So I spent 5 years as a lawyer and 20 plus years as a city planner and 20 plus years as a therapist. For the last 10 years or so, I haven't worked in the traditional sense. A major component of my life is the philanthropy. The common wisdom is that gay men become invisible at age fill in the blank. Some people say 50, some people say 60, whatever. I'm not invisible even now at my advanced age. Why? Because I can do things for people, and I'm quite happy with that. I was very closeted and very retrograde, or whatever the right word is, until 1975. Those were often lonely years. I wanted a relationship, always wanted a relationship. So how did I meet Robert? I decided I was going to move to an elevator building. So I sent out an email to everyone I knew, so to speak, and said, can you recommend a designer to work with me when I move? And the second one I interviewed was Robert. And the way I like to tell the tale was that after 5 minutes, I decided I wanted to work with him. And after 5 weeks, I realized I was in love with him. And after 5 months, he finally succumbed to my entreaties. It hasn't been an easy road for the two of us. We live separately. We go on these trips, long trips. We're together 24 hours a day for weeks. It's fine. We got legally married. But we have a little shrine over there. We have the invitation. We have the glass that we drank wine out of. And we have a thing that the Buddhists use to put good wishes in. We had people write good wishes for us, and we put them all in there, and they're still there to look at whenever we look at them. And then there's a Japanese drum that we brought back from Japan that was played during the wedding. We had a wonderful time. It was so much fun.
Thank you to Mason Funk and the Outwards Archive. I think Mason might be here with us tonight. He's been a guest in my class and taught my students that archiving is activism. Al's in the room, and I know he is proud of us and of you, and I'd like to invite Robert to come join me up here. And also Lou. This evening, for the second year, I have the delightful opportunity to lift up and recognize Robert Holgate's work behind the scenes, funding our Queering Religion program, the only one of its kind. To help me with this pleasure, I invite last year's inaugural recipient, Lou Corrigan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Robert, it's been an honor to have my name associated with yours. I am last year's recipient of the Robert Holgate Pride Fellowship, the Pride Award. It is a fellowship to highlight activism, student activism in queering religion at USF, at the University of San Francisco. This award named in honor of activist and philanthropist for the queer community, Robert Holgate, right next to me. Will enable the Queering Religion ministry to create more inclusive programs and build spiritual communities on campus, and that will translate beyond. Robert Holgate.
Just give that to him.
What?
You could give that to him now because he's going to introduce the project.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here you are.
You can do it though.
Oh, I'm going to support you.
Lou's the best. I just have to say. Wow. Thank you all so much for being here. It's hard to realize about this year would be 25 years since Al and I were married, or together, 14 years married. And you know, Camille's been part of my life ever since the moment that we got married. And she definitely helped Al transition through life into death. And I have to say, without her by our side, it would have been a much different ending. Al had the ending he wanted. He was loved, deeply loved, and respected. And, you know, that brings me to another point. It's not part of what I'm supposed to say, but I want to bring this up. I have the honor of presenting scholarships every year, thanks to Camille. And this is the second year we've done it. And each time we have our committee, we have students come in, they do their presentation. And every single time I'm blown away by how much they love Camille. Camille brings them together, gives them a voice, makes them equal, heard, proud, and just really honors who they are as human beings. So Camille, this is to you, my dear. Thank you very much. Okay. So on to this year's awardees. We interviewed two, and they are both phenomenal. So there was no way in hell I could choose one, and I think all of us on the host committee felt the same way. So we chose both, and for good reason. And the awardees each get a $1,500 grant that I give through my foundation. But this year I decided to double it. So each awardee, where are you two, are going to get, instead of $1,500, you're going to get $3,000 apiece. Hart and Sydney, would you mind coming up? Good job. So, because we love your passion, your commitment, and what you're doing, how you're embodying what you presented to us, I wanted to double it. I feel like what you're doing, you're going to change the world, both of you. And I look forward to following along. So... Okay, now I'm going to read. Hank Patillo Rose has already started his project by writing, directing, and acting in performances about a creation, myth, and trans non-binary people in ancient Mesopotamia. Forgive me if I pronounce things wrong. Where a gender-ambiguous being is made to save a goddess from underworld. Though tested... The story's ending highlight the diversity of queer people. In addition to repeating this wonderful play, Hart will work in collaboration with other queer artists, writers, and on a collection of works detailing historical and mythological queer figures, not only showing we always existed, but are also sacred and divine. And I must say, I love their outfit. And the other thing about the awardees tonight, both are coming from a creative space, from wanting to create, to present, and for me, a theater buff, I love theater, it just warmed my heart. Sydney is spearheading, Sydney Wright, sorry my dear, is spearheading a miniature film festival, which will display legacy videos of Rabbi Angels honoring queer religious elders. Her course, which I know Pam's been a part of, Marcy's been a part of, Mark Galano's been a part of, many from our community have been elders for this program, and it's meant the world for the elders and for the students. So bravo, Camille, that's another one of your creations, my dear. Rabbi Angel, honoring our queer religious elders course, followed by an opportunity to have a discussion with the elder who is the subject of the video. This will be open to students and the public, with opportunities for community engagement. A minimum of 3 elder videos and legacies will be shared per semester. It will create Queering Religion's own version of the Frameline Film Festival, displaying short films that encapsulate the queer experience alongside the intersection of other identities and religions. Congratulations. Can they give a few remarks, Camille?
They just want to say thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love it. And then I'll introduce Pam.
Oh, yeah. I just want to say thank you. That's crazy. Okay. I'll probably start freaking out about it more tomorrow when I realize. Thank you so much. I also want to thank all the queer elders in the room. Growing up, I didn't have any queer elders, and one of the things that got me through all of the hardships in my life was knowing that I needed to become a queer elder. And so thank you guys all for being here. And then I also wanted to take this moment to just like put it out there that I hope the university protects its international students and does not hand them over to ICE. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm also in shock. Okay. So as I begin to start to actually work to make this a real project, I'm reminded of everyone who has made this possible. There's no way I could name everyone. We would be here for a very long time, and nobody wants that. But some of them are the teaching elders that are vulnerable and willing to share their lives with us. They've also shown me that it's possible to be a queer and religious elder, which I've never seen just a queer elder, let alone a religious queer elder. The students who work tirelessly to create the legacy videos that I'll be using, I also helped create those, but I don't have the tech skills necessary, so some students really pulled through and worked really hard to honor or assign teaching elders. Robert Holgate, who is funding this and helping make a dream of mine come true. I've never had a project that I think of in my mind become a reality. And of course, Rabbi Angel, who has helped make all of this possible through her unwavering support. In addition to just having amazing classes, she's created a community for me that I desperately needed and didn't know could exist. Yeah, thank you.
Now, this is truly an honor for me. I get to introduce my very dear, best, wonderful advisor, friend, wifey, Pam David. She and I lost our partners within the same year. Cheryl, I lost Al, and we have been by each other's side the whole time. And I honestly don't think I could do this work and continue to do it without Pam's sage advice and counsel and just her loving friendship. I can't think of a better person. Pam?
There's a backstory to the wifey and hubby thing, but I'm not going to say it here. I know this has been introduction to introduction to introduction. We're getting close, but I have the absolute great honor of introducing State Senator Scott Wiener. I've known Scott for many, many years, and I've never gotten to give him a proclamation or introduce him or do anything, so I'm delighted to do that. Scott has been in public service. I should call you Senator. Senator Wiener has been in public service for a very long time, first holding a seat at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in the district that first elected Harvey Milk. And then he went on to the State Assembly and then to the State Senate. And he does us proud. He represents our city. He fights for our city. As an out gay man, he has taken numerous hits on right-wing TV and media channels for being so out loud and proud. And he has represented both the Jewish community and the queer community brilliantly, and I am very proud to introduce him, to introduce our guest speaker.
Good evening, everyone. Pam, thank you so much. So when It's such an honor to be able to introduce the amazing Rabbi Mintz. When the rabbi asked me to do this, I was just, first of all, just floored that she would think of me. And I was so honored, and as I started to think about it more, and learn more. Sometimes you know people for a long time, but you don't know every detail. And I actually think that the year that Rabbi Mintz became a rabbi at Temple Emanu-El was the year that I arrived in San Francisco, or thereabouts. And I knew who she was way before she knew who I was. I was just this young gay kid who came here from the East Coast, from a more sort of conservative, it was New Jersey, but the more conservative part of New Jersey, the part that voted for Ronald Reagan and all the other Republicans, and a fairly conservative Jewish upbringing. And I didn't know that things like lesbian rabbis existed. I did not know that that was a thing, but obviously it is in a big way. And so I knew early on who Rabbi Mintz was, even though we had never met. And that was, you were one of the people who inspired me as a young gay Jew who was getting involved and active, and helped give me confidence. And there are people who do that, and it's such an important role to play. I can go through the rabbi's biography. It's very impressive, as you all know, and I think a lot of the people in the room know the work that she's done at Emanu-El, making Emanu-El, which is this just revered institution that's almost as old as the city is, more expansive and inclusive, and bringing more and more people, including young people, in, and that is a powerful thing. All of the nonprofits, Jewish progressive nonprofits that she's been critical in getting off the ground and running, the work she's done around music and now comedy, she's just contributed so much to our community. But one thing I will just also say is that being queer and Jewish is not always easy. It is one of those intersections that raises many, many complexities. And if you are a sort of a lefty gay Jew or lesbian Jew or trans Jew, you're not always welcome in every progressive space. And there are times when there are real issues and you don't always feel welcome. There are also times when you're not so welcome in some more conservative Jewish spaces. And so it's almost like you're not pure enough on one side, you're not pure enough on the other, and you get a little squeezed, and you sometimes, it's challenging, I'll be honest, and I think there are various people in this room who have experienced that. But we managed to carve our own path, to chart our own path. And Rabbi Mintz, you have been a leader in charting that path, about what it means to be a strong Jew, a strong queer person, and a strong fighter for social justice. And we are living in a very, I'll say challenging, but frankly scary time, where you actually start reading the paper every day, and I'm one of the people who still reads the paper, not the physical paper, the digital paper. And you wonder, are we going to continue to have a democracy? Are universities going to continue to be allowed to be places of critical thinking and diverse opinions? Are lawyers still going to be allowed to sue the government when the government violates the law? What's going to happen with trans people as we see the campaign to completely and utterly erase trans people from public life? And of course, so many of us are going to fight very hard against all of those things. But it comforts me to know that Sydney Mintz, that you are here and you are who you are, and you make me very proud as a San Franciscan, as a gay man, as a Jew. And so please join me in welcoming to the stage to give the Baum another amazing human being, by the way, the Baum Memorial Lecturer, Rabbi Sydney Mintz.
I love you too. Whoever yelled at me that way, I love you too. What a long series of introductions it's been tonight. I kind of feel like introducing somebody. I don't know why. It's an honor. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Senator, so much for that warm welcome introduction. And it is really an honor just to be here and be among queer and Jewish friends, family, people on the front lines of so much of the work that we all do. And indeed, it is a very scary, difficult, dark time. But tonight's a night of celebration. Do we not need a celebration? Yes. So should I start with a Jewish joke? Yes. It's supposed to be a lecture, but this isn't actually a joke. This is just a reality for a long time, which I know Rabbi Angel and I can relate to, and I am going to tell you about how I got arrested with her a few years ago, if you didn't know. That's not the joke. The joke has to do with the reality of what it used to be like, which was there was a member of my congregation who had cousins in New York City, and they went to New York, and they brought their kids, and they got to New York, and when they got to New York, the rabbi and the cantor of that congregation were doing the bar mitzvah for their cousin, and the kid looked up and had been at Emanu-El growing up his entire life and had really only seen a woman rabbi, a woman cantor, and got to New York and saw a male rabbi for the first time and looked to his mother and said, "I can't believe it, men can become rabbis?" So I think about that when it comes to the trajectory of being in the LGBT community, and Senator, you could not have said it more eloquently. That space that we occupy can be a fearful space if you're Jewish and queer at the same time. So I love that I'm standing here with our queer ancestry and our Jewish ancestry, and of course congratulating the students who got the Holgate Award tonight, and thanking the Swig Center for Social Justice and Jewish Studies for the honor of addressing all of you. The memory of our beloved and dear friend Al Baum. It's always wonderful to be able to think about somebody embodying their memory. I knew Al very well, and if you were Jewish or gay in the last 40 years, 50 years in San Francisco, you knew him. He was a dear mentor to all of those of us who occupied that space of being queer and Jewish. And I want to thank Robert and Pam for this great honor as well. And I also want to honor the teachers in this program. And my God, the teachers on university campuses over the last 18 months, over the last few months, my heart goes out to all of you who have been in the trenches in so many ways. So I want to honor the teachers in this program, especially my friends and colleagues, Dr. Aaron Hahn-Tepper, Oren Kroll-Zeldin, and my friend, Rabbi Camille Angel. Way before this award, I had the opportunity to teach at USF in both Aaron and Camille's classes over the past 15 years, and it's incredible. It's a very, very different program than anyone I've ever encountered. I also want to just acknowledge the name Swig that although it was Mel Swig, one of our congregants who founded the Swig Judaic Studies chair here, I think his great-grandson is here, Adam Swig, who's on the board of USF, Lador Vador. And I wanted to really talk a little bit about the stories of, as I called them, well, first of all, does everybody here get the reference to what a long, strange trip it's been? Raise your hand if you don't. Okay, there's a band that used to be called the Grateful Dead, and there was a song, the line was, "What a long, strange trip it's been," and Dead and Company still performs it, if you want to hear it. And it is about this idea of all of us being on a journey, and that it is a strange journey, in case you haven't noticed it. A long, strange trip it's been. And for me, I said it was tales of resistance and resilience. And I think about the fact that we are all on a journey, and that every single person in this room, and anybody who's watching us, you came from somewhere else. You might have been born in this country, but somebody in your family came from somewhere else. And I want to begin with that because I think it's so important when you come to a campus that is ranked the #1 campus in diversity in the country. So many of the students here who are living in fear, who are scared in terms of their own identity and their safety here on campus. I want to reassure you that everybody, if they are remembering, comes from somewhere else. So I want you to just take a moment, turn to somebody you don't know in here, and tell them where your family came from. Just take a minute. Where did your family come from? It wasn't from here. It's always tricky letting people start talking because, somebody's going to find out that they were from the exact same town in Białystok, Poland, from 3 generations. It always happens. So before I start on some of my own stories, I do want to say that as the senator spoke about, being a queer Jew has often felt like identity is either ripping or tearing apart at the seams more recently, misunderstood, and almost at times at odds with each other. So I want to say before I begin, how can I be a queer progressive Zionist who believes in a safe and secure homeland for both Jews and Palestinians? How can I? It seems almost like I'm not allowed to exist, but I do. And I am. And the reason I can is because I say I can. And I'm not going to let anybody else define me and tell me I can't be a struggling Zionist and also somebody who supports peaceful coexistence and safety and dignity for all people in their own country. So I think it's very important. And I think sometimes being yourself can be very challenging, and coming out as who you are simultaneously also the most powerful example of activism, just being who you are and speaking truth to power. I also, when I've thought about the last 18 months on campuses, and I've thought about the Chabads and the Hillels that are supporting the Jewish students, and then I think about the fact that the Jews make up less than 2% of the population in this country, I think about, well, how are we educating the other 98% of the non-Jewish students? So I want to say hats off to you, Rabbi Angel, and to this program, because 95% of the students in the programs, in the SWIG program, are not Jewish. And how important is it for us as a Jewish community to educate students on campus when we have seen for the last 18 months, so many of them get their education from encampments or protests. And so I just want to lift up, really, this program. And I do also want to just quote what you said, Rabbi Angel wrote about your position here. You said, some of my students have never met a Jew. Most of my students haven't met a woman rabbi, let alone a lesbian rabbi who uses her own story as text. This opportunity enables me to share some of the ideas and strategies that Jews have used over centuries to navigate intolerance and to create something better. Not just for the Jews, obviously for everyone. So rabbis usually like to start with a text. And so I'm going to just give you something which when you showed that book, Lesbian Rabbis, the First Generation, the text that I used in that book, in that chapter, was the text from my senior sermon. And that was in the 1830s, when I was in rabbinical school, just a few years after Rabbi Angel. And that text comes from the only Torah portion in the entire Torah that's named for a woman. It's called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. And just spoiler alert, she dies in the first line. That's usually what happens to women. You get your own chapter, you die in the first line. Her husband, Abraham, goes to buy a burial site. And it's the site where many of our ancestors were buried. It's the cave of Machpelah. And he talks to the people who own that cave, the Hittites. And he says to Ephron, who owns the cave, he says, Ger v'toshav. I am a ger v'toshav. And that's what I believe the title of I haven't read it in about 60 years, the title of that chapter was Ger V'Toshav, which means I am a ger, a stranger, and I'm also a resident. I'm a stranger and I belong here. Raise your hand if you can just relate to that. I'm a stranger, but I belong here. That's like totally the Jewish story forever, and it's also a queer story. And so I think about that. I think about what it means to be ger v'toshav. It's what you just experienced when you talked about where you actually came from, where your families came from. So my family came here via Ellis Island, Chicago, into California from a little town on the Black Sea in Russia called Kerch. It's also where this flute came from. This flute has come a long way from Kerch. It was born somewhere in Europe in the 19th century, and it was certainly one of the many instruments that was played by my family, my great-grandparents. They were a very musical family, and they all played instruments. This is the one instrument they brought over on the Wilhelm de Kaiser, on the boat from Russia to Ellis Island. It was the instrument that they brought in what was left of my paternal family after Tsar Nicholas and the Russians had their way with them in Kerch. My father's family, the Strelkys, had joined the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia when Tsar Nicholas began his terrible rule in the 1880s. My uncles Nahum and Samuel were beheaded for their resistance, and my Aunt Bertha was imprisoned. My great-great-grandmother went to visit Bertha on the prison steps. She died. It was a dark time for the Jews. It was a very dark time for the world. I don't think that my story is that different from so many immigrants' stories. Now, if you fast forward 125 years, I think about the Strelkys and the lives they were forced to flee, the journey they had to forge to survive, and I think of the two youngest sisters who were actually born in the United States. And I think about the fact that all of us have narrowly missed some kind of treacherous fate that brought us here. And those two sisters missed the fate of their other relatives in Europe at the end of the century, and then again during the Holocaust. But by then, my family was happily ensconced in life in Chicago. We had new musical instruments. Children went to school, and then to college and to law school. Judaism receded a little bit, and we became very American. We got a new foothold and the ability to grow new roots in this country. And I wonder about your ancestors and mine, what they would think about the lives we live today and how the world is today, whether you're queer or Jewish or anything in between. In my family, I don't know if they were in this room, if they would recognize us, a doctor, a lawyer, a Buddhist monk, a documentary filmmaker, and a lesbian rabbi, and their flute. Still intact in some ways and still here in the Golden Medina here in California. Would my great-great-grandparents recognize me? Now, it's not until I was in rabbinical school when I learned the great teachings of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And the two teachings that have always resonated with me from him are the ideas of living with a sense of radical amazement and being a Jew in this world, that we're responsible for taking our prayers to the streets for what we believe, to express our values and to show the world who we are and the kind of world that we want to build. When he was describing the voting rights march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965 with Dr. Martin Luther King, Heschel wrote that he was praying with his feet. That's why we're encouraged to protest and get out there and not just pray inside of safe places, but to go out in some ways in dangerous places and show who we are. My own grandmother was the first one who would schlep me around the Jewish community and first introduced me to what it felt like to pray with my hands and my feet. She was always asked to show up and represent the Jewish community. She was super Jew, like super, super Jew. Anybody else have a grandparent like that? Like super Jew. In fact, you guys know what vanity license plates are, right? Like, we think of it like LA, everybody has a vanity. My family were like the early adopters in Chicago of vanity license plates. My grandmother's license plate said MNSCHMKR. Menschmaker, yes, Menschmaker. Interestingly enough, that was the only Jewish license plate we had in my family business. From my great-grandfather was the plumbing business. So my grandfather's vanity plate was bidet. And my uncle's vanity plate was flush. Seriously, it which, you know, these are just examples of why I had a hard time deciding if I should be a stand-up comic or a rabbi, or both. The first time I actually remember, like, the shifting of my understanding of what it was to be in need was not just in need, but what it meant to serve other people, was a Hanukkah in the late 1970s. Like San Francisco, Chicago had absorbed tens of thousands of Jews from the former Soviet Union. The entire Jewish community of Chicago was charged with their entry into life. We spent that afternoon and evening ushering in Jews from the former Soviet Union at Hanukkah at a huge event where we would serve them Hanukkah dinner and we would give them a Hanukkah present. I was 9 years old, and it was my job to hand out the gifts, which mostly consisted of clothing. I distinctly remember one man opening a package that I handed to him, and he looked angrily at the beautiful necktie that he had opened. He wrapped it back up and he threw it into the gift box. And then he took out another gift, and he opened it up and he looked at me and he threw it back in. He did this 3 times. And I thought, what is wrong with this man? He finally opened up a package. He tore it open, he looked at it, he nodded, and he went back to his table. And I thought, my 9-year-old self, oh, I can't believe he did that. That was so rude. I would never do that. How dare he? And I actually went to his table. Like, what was I going to say to him? And I looked at him, and he had thrown back the necktie that I'd given him and 3 other gifts, and he was sitting there opening up the socks. And I looked down at him. I remember it was December in Chicago, and he was wearing shoes with no socks. And he took off his shoes, and he put on the socks, and then he put his shoes back on. And I realized he did not need a tie. He needed socks. And it wasn't rude what he had done to me. In some ways, what I had done to him was rude. That was the first time I actually got what it meant to make sure that people actually get what they need. So it was also the time that I kind of resonated with the fact that every time that I would say the Shema, the prayer about listening, is at the end is echad, unity or oneness. And I realized in that moment that that man could have been me and I could have been that man, that we're all echad. It was just different time and different place, that my family had escaped and his hadn't. That some of us have socks and some of us don't. Some of us have homes and some of us don't. Some of us have land and some of us don't. And some of us have freedom and most of us don't. And at 9 years old, I became aware that I didn't have much control over those realities or which one might be mine at any given moment in my life, especially as a Jew. I would come to realize that later as a lesbian, but what I did realize in that moment, more importantly, was that I really wanted to make sure that people had socks and shoes and food and shelter and community when I was 9 years old. And I realized I could do something about it. So to continue on the theme of Russia, which this is the good Russia. At my bat mitzvah, I received a silver bracelet with the name of a refusenik, a Jew from the former Soviet Union who was being held in prison there without a way to escape to freedom. My generation marched and rallied and wrote letters and sent medicine and gifts to support freeing those Jews who remained in the former Soviet Union. I could understand that because I could look at a map and see Kerch, where my family came from, and I could look at my bracelet, which said Leonid Kelbert, who was just this anonymous refusenik. I wore that bracelet for 6 years. I wore it until he was freed, until he made it to Tel Aviv, and then with the miracle of modern technology, I got to Google stalk him along the way and see that he became a documentary maker in Israel. And I was there when 250, 250,000 Jews flew to Washington, D.C. and cried out, "Let my people go again," to our president and to Gorbachev. And to feel that when you get together, you pray with your feet as a community, and almost nothing can get to you if you're going to tell your truth and you're going to come out together. I'd also never been around 250,000 Jews together at the same time. I don't think I have since then. As Rabbi Angel mentioned, we, as rabbis, had the opportunity and the blessing to marry many, many straight couples before marriage equality became something that was a reality. And in 2008, after we had officiated at probably hundreds of weddings for brides and grooms, the then mayor of San Francisco, Gavin Newsom, made marriage equality legal. And we started officiating at LGBT weddings in City Hall. Then Prop 8, an anti-marriage equality ballot that denied California couples the freedom to marry, was passed in 2008. And when it was ruled constitutional by the California Supreme Court in 2009, I found myself with Rabbi Angel at Grace Cathedral, with interfaith leaders from around the Bay Area who one by one stood up when asked who would be willing to be arrested for this basic human right. It was like, okay, you guys can get married. Sorry, you can't. You could just rip up your marriage certificates and leave your family vulnerable. I was amazed that every single minister, priest, and rabbi in the room stood up. And I also want to acknowledge that I had the privilege at that time to get arrested, to prove a point for civil disobedience, knowing full well that I would probably get out that day or the next unscathed, which is not the usual situation when one in this country gets arrested. True to that commitment, the next morning I sat and performed a single act of civil disobedience, disturbing the peace by blocking traffic, sitting in the streets surrounded by clergy from so many faiths singing "We Shall Overcome." And I thought about the couple I had already married twice in the last 2 years, who I would again marry 2 more times. That was my record, marrying one couple, the same couple 4 times, as it became legal and not legal. And you should have seen their marriage registry. It was outrageous for the 4 weddings. But it was very obvious to me as the people, who here has ever been to a protest rally where people got arrested or saw? Okay, so there's people who come and they support the people who are getting arrested, and this was a Jew. There were definitely Jews because they brought sunscreen and water. Okay, so they're giving us sunscreen and water. And I was linked next to Rabbi Camille Angel, and every time they came by with the water, I would drink another bottle of water. And Rabbi Angel said to me, "Sid, what are you doing?" I said, "We're going to get dehydrated, so I'm drinking the water they're giving us." She goes, "There's no bathroom in the prison, Rabbi." I said, "Why?" She goes, "Have you never been arrested before?" I said, "No, have you?" She said, "Of course." She had. So I actually had the chutzpah to turn around to the cop behind me and I said, "Can I go to the bathroom?" during the protest. And he was Jewish. He was a cop whose name was Goldbaum. And he did let me go to the bathroom. I ran to City Hall. I came back and then linked arms. And then they arrested us. And I was in a paddy wagon with Rabbi Angel and a group of nuns. I think we should have done a podcast at that point. They didn't have podcasts, but that would have been amazing. Like in the paddy wagon with the nuns and the lesbian rabbis. Come on. So I do want to say, just as I'm focusing on you for a second, that it's no surprise to me what a tremendous impact you have made here, my friend and my colleague. And your ministry, your menschlichkeit, and your commitment to nurture and support the students on this campus in such deeply personal and intimate ways is really unparalleled. So I would like to just, for one moment, just give a big round of applause for that. Is really hard sometimes, especially these days, and the people that you serve need you so much. So thank you for putting your whole heart and soul into your students. Recently, one of the most important immigrant aid organizations in the world lost 60% of its USAID funding overnight. This organization is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, who has operated for over 120 years to save the lives of immigrants in dire straits around the world, operating in over 20 countries. It's the organization that supported most Jewish immigrants, including my family, who arrived here in the last century. And in case you don't know this mind-blowing and mind-numbing number, there are currently 80 million refugees on our planet. 80 million. Not toshavim, not toshav, not residents of anywhere, only gerim, strangers, wherever they may be at this moment. Just before the pandemic, HIAS and Rabbis for Human Rights gathered a cohort of rabbis in 2019 to travel as witnesses to the US-Mexico border, visiting both El Paso, where only a few months before a domestic terrorist had opened fire in a Walmart and killed 23 people, and Ciudad Juarez on the Mexican side of the border. These two organizations brought us there to bear witness, to visit the memorial, and to travel to both sides of the border to detention centers and to see where people were being served. It was my first time in a detention camp, in a detention center. I had been to concentration camps, and there was something inside of me that felt the same, except there are not ghosts and memories in detention camps. There are living people, young and old, separated from their families, held in private prisons. I walked through and saw hundreds of young men being held in detention, all who were supposed to be over 18, but I could tell many of whom were not. So we prayed, we met with many of those serving the asylees and refugees on both sides of the border, and we moved back and forth between the two cities as easily as anyone who has a passport that is accepted everywhere. I have one, at least for now. It's an American passport, which clearly states my nationality as American. I tell you these stories because being an activist who carries the identity of being Jewish and gay has been painful and has been beautiful and has invited me to stretch my understanding of what a ger v'toshav really is, a resident and a stranger. To be a queer Jew today, at times, as I said, feels scary, almost like an oxymoron, almost as if my two identities are at odds with one another. And I do feel like it's up to each one of us to think about what Jews call la'or hagoyim, that each one of us needs to be, not just for our own community, la'or, a light to the nations, to the goyim. To those of you who are currently students at USF, these years of your life are intended to be the most hopeful, intended to give you a pathway to a beautiful future that your education will ensure. This school is made up of serious diversity. What a blessing this diversity is. Not a weakness, not a blemish, but a beautiful blessing. So I want to end with a short story about a teacher of ours, a teacher of mine and of Rabbi Angel's, a rabbi who I wrestled with in my rabbinate, a rabbi who refused to sign my rabbinic ordination in 1997, because even though I was in that book, Lesbian Rabbis, he wouldn't sign my certificate because I was gay. And he did not understand how a gay or lesbian rabbi could serve the Jewish people. It just did not make sense to him. A rabbi who at the end of almost 100 years of life made a tshuva, a turn, a reckoning, and a profound change. And he invited every single person who he had refused to come forward for his signature. I was the very last smicha. I was the very last ordination certificate that he signed. His name is Dr. Rabbi Eugene Borowitz of blessed memory. And this is the story that he would share with us, his rabbinical students. HUC, our rabbinical seminary, is in Manhattan. The Brookdale Center is right near NYU. And he would travel to Queens every single day on the subway. And what he shared with us, and this is why I think it's so powerful, because of the tshuva he did, and you can imagine what it was like for me, for Rabbi Angel, to spend 5 years of our life in seminary, to have one of our revered teachers look us in the eye and say, no, I can't sign this. And then this is what his Torah was, his teaching. He said to us that every single day that he would leave the seminary, he would get on the subway. If you've ever been on a New York subway at rush hour, you're in the crush of humanity. He had everybody of every color, of every gender, of every race, religion, creed pressed up against him. And what he would do is he would just stand and he would look at every single person in the eye and he would say to himself the words, created in the image of God, but seldom Elohim, created in the image of God, created in the image of God, created in the image of God. I love that Torah so much because it's what we need so much more in this world, so much more in this country, and you are embodying it here in this program. That's the final story. But the final sound tonight is not the sound of the flute, because I'm sorry, Avram and Bunya Strilke, I never learned how to play it. It's not my instrument. The final sound tonight is the tekiah, because the shofar is my instrument. It's a lot louder. It's a lot stronger in a lot of ways. The shofar we think of as blasting us open, blasting our awareness and our consciousness to a different and a better place, not just for us as individuals or the Jewish community or the queer community, but for the world, because we all have something to share, something to give, and something to light up in this world. So I'm going to end with a blast of the shofar, a blast that has carried the Jewish people for 4,000 years when we were a desert tribe, all the way to Kerch, all the way to Morocco, to New Jersey, and here to San Francisco. I want us to all hearken to this sound. It's a sound not just on Rosh Hashanah that we hear, it's a sound that reverberates every single day of the year to invite us to be lighter, brighter, deeper, bigger as a community. So can I have a tekiah?
We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll come with the mic to you. I want to give a postscript to Rabbi Eugene Horowitz of blessed memory, who ultimately, before he died, actually made a public statement that he had been wrong. And he invited students to come back with their sneaker, and he would sign it. And at first I was like, and then after a year, I thought, well, I'd rather have the story about this man who changed his mind. This teacher who said, I was wrong. That's what I want framed. And so, anyway, I thank you for bringing him to mind. I think we changed how we felt about it. It was like, we help him.
How could he not like us? I mean, come on.
Question for me, for Rabbi Sid, someone. I know you do.
Hi, thank you so much for your words. They were really inspiring. I know of your work also with End of Life, and I was curious if you would tell us a little bit about what inspired you to think outside the box with End of Life medicine and such.
You know, I feel like these days, no matter what I teach at Torah, Talmud, it all comes back to psychedelics. Jews and psychedelics, that's what you're talking about, right? So there's this incredible organization called Reimagine, End of Life. One of our congregants, Brad Wolf, founded it. It's in the Bay Area and in New York. The Reimagine, End of Life. First death festival I ever went to and had a good time. And as you can imagine, as a rabbi, we do everything from birth all the way to death and beyond. And so the work that I was privileged to be a part of was really the learning from people who've been using psychedelics as medicine in End of Life, and how it's become much more a part of universities that are doing research. I don't know if there's still, who knows what's being funded anymore, right? But research that was done on psychedelics at Johns Hopkins, at Stanford, about how people who are having really deep anxiety and depression at end of life have been utilizing psychedelics in order to make that transition a more beautiful transition. So sometimes it can be rabbis who can help you, but also there are other things that can help you. But I will also say that we're all going to transit. We're all transitioning in different ways. We're all going to transition in terms of our life at the end of that journey. And I think that there's a lot of different ways on the spiritual path that can be helpful, whether it's you or somebody that you love is going through that. And Reimagine End of Life, this festival, is so much about how to help people. It doesn't have to be psychedelics, it can be so many other things, but that very precarious part of those moments, yeah.
Oh, good. Stand up and be loud. I'll come to you.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. Several people today mentioned difficulty of intersectionality, of being Jewish, queer, person of color, going into this terrible era that we're walking into together now. What words of wisdom do you have for us?
That's a great question. And if you didn't hear me, he was talking about this very dark time that we're in intersectionality in terms of our different identities. There's this rabbis love, as I said, love text. So kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od. Ikar lo lefachet klal is the whole world is a very narrow bridge. And it's translated as the most important thing is not to be afraid. But the actual original text says the most important thing is not to make oneself afraid. And I think that there's many ways that we get ourselves trapped in a place, whether it's doom scrolling or reading the wrong thing or having the wrong conversation, where we spiral into a darker place. And I'm not saying it's not already dark, it's very dark. But what I will say is, yeah, we're in a very narrow, dark place, but we can't make ourselves more afraid than what's really happening. And by that I mean, we can take other people and bring them onto the narrow bridge with us. It might be a narrow bridge, but I say just like, take somebody by the hand, even if they don't want to be taken, and pull them shoulder to shoulder with you. Because when you're shoulder to shoulder and you have linked arms with another human being and you've shared your story with them, you figure out that there's a lot more of us who want the light, a lot more of us who have compassion than the people who are trying to drown out that voice. So I would say, the hope that I get, today, it felt so hopeful to think about, well, there's still students on campus, we still have universities, we still have programs of higher education, and I think we have to be buddies and mentors to the people who are in need, whatever that light is that needs to be brought to them.
Okay, two more. Well, thank you for speaking about Israeli-Palestinian issues. And being on a university campus, I know so much talk about what's going on now in terms of the universities taking a stand and anti-Semitism. And have you thought about what's going on in Colombia and how we as university people can actually think about, what we all need to do in terms of making a stand?
Well, I think sometimes making a stand is like, or taking a stand is the next step, and the step before making or taking a stand is the conversations that we have to have. And so, when I started out talking about that, it's really difficult to talk about Israel and Palestine. It's just, it's terribly difficult. And is it okay for us to kind of come out about who we are and our identities? Yes. So I think that, I don't work on campus, I work in a congregation where there's plenty of kids who are on campus who we've been, I don't want to say dealing with, we've been supporting over the last 18 months. And what I would say is to stay involved and not to turn away, to support our students, to support our faculty, to support anybody who's involved in higher education with what's going on, because in many ways it feels like an assault. What's going on between the government and universities feels like an assault. And I would also say that we have to be very wary, and I know this is sensitive, we have to be very wary when it seems like the powers that be are saving us from anti-Semitism. In many ways, it feels to me like our community is being weaponized, and I don't want to say they're going to blame the Jews eventually, because that's never happened. All I'm saying, wink, wink, nod, nod, is to have a little bit of, we have to respect our government when things are going well, but you also have to be wary when people are saying, look, it's the Jews, we're going to help them out. So when it comes to our government saying things are about anti-Semitism, watch out for what comes next, and just have an awareness and read a lot more. Read a lot more. Yeah.
That's yours.
Hello. How do you feel about, last year there was an incredible talk given through this program detailing anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism. And one of the things that was detailed is that Zionism actually affects negatively the Jewish diaspora. How can one reconcile a Jewish ethno-state while also saying that every person one sees, every person that exists is made in the image of God.
Can you answer that question on one foot in 1 minute?
Yes, I can. I've been doing yoga since I moved from Chicago, so I can. In one minute. Yes. I don't define Israel as an ethno-state, and I believe that because I can support my homeland, I can support Israel, and I can keep leaning into it in a way where I can criticize the government, and I can support the right of people to exist in Israel and Palestine. That I can call myself a Zionist. I said I've struggled with Zionism in the same way that I've struggled with what we call Americanism. That I feel like I can be an American patriot, and I can criticize my government, and I should be able to, and I hope I still get to, when I don't think that the American democratic values are being expressed. And I feel the same way about Israel, which is I want Israel to exist. I want it to be a democracy. I want there to be clear rights for everyone. And I want people in Palestine to have that same right for dignity and for safety and security. Can I say I'm a struggling Zionist and believe in a homeland for the Jewish people and the Palestinian people? Yeah, because I think one of the biggest issues is having other people tell you who you are, and other people tell you your narrative is wrong, and other people tell you that you don't exist. And I would say in the same way that somebody is saying to me, well, you can't be that. You can't be a Zionist and also support a Palestinian state. I would say, well, am I going to let the government take off T from LGBT? No, I'm not. So I think that we have to be respectful of one another's opinions and sometimes agree to disagree on really fundamental places. As I said, would my great-grandparents come back, would they recognize us? Well, you know, my brother is a Theravadan Buddhist monk. That's not the joke, that's for real. So I want to end with this, which is, there is a Jewish mother from New Jersey, and she is going on a quest, a spiritual quest, and she flies all the way to Tibet, and she gets a shirka, and she gets taken up to the top of this mountain, this Jewish woman, she's in her 90s, she's never actually left New York. And she finally gets to the top of this mountain, and there's a long line of people up to the guru. And he's sitting with his legs crossed, with just a loincloth on. And his assistant is coming by to everybody and saying to everybody in line, you could say 3 words. You could say 3 words to the guru. And she waits. It's an hour and a half she's waiting in the beaming sun to say something to the guru. And she finally gets up, and it's her turn. And she looks down at this man who's bald, he's wearing a loincloth, and she says to him, Sherman, come home!